Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to On the Prowl, Panthers Trade for Seth Jones, episode 27, with very special guest Rod Petersen from the number one hockey podcast in the state of Florida, Cats and Bolts. Rod, welcome. How are you?
Hey, good, Bill. It's been too long, buddy. How you doing?
Doing real well, and I gotta say, and please pass on all my best to your better half as well too. And
I will.
And I gotta say this: she is just lightning in a bottle. I absolutely love. That's why I tune in every week. I do not miss a podcast. You know, she reminds me so much of my own better half because my own better half says it like it is, and that's what I love about your better half. Trent, she just boom right there. It's
well, thank you. She gets me in a lot of trouble, but she doesn't care. So I guess I shouldn't care, huh? What do you think?
That's right. That's right. We're just going to kind of dive right into it. And I know, everybody's been talking about the trade. I mean, it was a great game yesterday against Calgary. It probably should have been 6-0 the way they played yesterday. And just, it seemed like, oops, and we had another game, another goaltender interference call and another no goal, the kind of thing, I'm like, okay, the NHL has instituted a new rule. Whenever a Panther is in the crease, they're going to automatically call goaltender interference, even if he doesn't touch him. So I saw that yesterday. That was just that was just rich. But the first thing that I mean, and I know you responded back yesterday, and I was really this was a great response. Was I'm like, what are your reactions? And your reaction right away was, okay, the organization doesn't have faith in Spencer Knight. And I got to agree with you. Okay. And the reason I agree with you is how long he's been with the Panthers. He was 2019. Am I right?
I think it might've been 2020, but as you're talking, I'll look it up. I think it might've been 2020, but easy to find.
He's been with the organization for a while. And, while they say it really takes time to develop goaltenders, I mean, by this point in time, it's been 5 or 6 years. And, I think they weren't seeing the things that they wanted to see in a goaltender for a long term. What are your thoughts on that?
It was 2019, by the way.
Okay.
So that's coming up on 6 years ago. So you're right. And now a couple things. And before we get off the air today, I'm going to ask you about your penchant for stirring things up with people. I got to ask you about that because I don't get to talk to you. Your Twitter fights with fans of other teams. So listen, I want to talk about that.
Okay.
But in the case of Spencer Knight, they gave him, I think, every opportunity. As you've said, he's been with the team for a long time. He's on, I believe, his second contract. Now, I've never seen a goalie, Bill, and maybe you have, that is as polarizing as Spencer Knight, and for really no reason. He's got a lot of huge fans. As you know, they chant his name in the arena during the national anthem, right? Knight, right? But I'm like, what has he really done to deserve that? Because he hasn't played a ton in his time, right? Just because Bob's been here. So he hasn't had to. And also Anthony Stolarz and a Alex Lyons and a variety of other backups. So over the last how many years, he hasn't been able to wrestle that backup job away until this year. So why I just don't understand why they love him so much. But then on the flip side, as you know, he's got a lot of critics too, right? And you saw my tweet that was like, the Knight haters will be happy. They traded him away. And so on the flip side, why does he have the haters? Like he hasn't crapped the bed either in games. There were games this year where when he was bad, the whole team was bad. I think about that first game up in Buffalo. I think they lost 7-3. They were all awful. Joe said it on the air. Randy Moeller said it on the air. So my point is Spencer Knight's never been really good, nor has he never really been really bad. But let's put it this way. When he comes back with Chicago and they do a welcome back video, as they always do, how long is that video going to be? There's not a lot of highlight saves, Bill. There's not like Bob flailing around like Dominic Hasek. That's Bob's stuff. By the way, I was a goalie. So this is not a criticism. Spencer Knight is not flashy. He gets the job done. So I'm going to try and land the plane here by saying for a long time, the Panthers thought he was the guy. And let's remember, Dale Talon drafted him, not Bill Zito. Okay, so that's another thing. And Roberto Luongo's in the front office. I just feel like Luongo had his back for the longest period of time until the Panthers basically said, we've seen enough. We don't think he's that guy. And let's not forget, he went into the player assistant program voluntarily 2 years ago in 2023. And bravo to him for doing that, because I'm 10 years in recovery as well. It's the best thing you could do. But maybe there was something with that. We don't know the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but that's just my take on Spencer Knight. And I don't know who the next one's going to be. He was supposed to be the next one. It's not going to be Spencer Knight, obviously.
Right. And conversely, if you take a look in the system, okay, obviously Drieger's going to come up. They already called him up to back up Bob. And then people have said in some of the first comments I've seen, he hasn't been good the past couple of years. And I said, well, you have to remember something. He's been with the Kraken, okay? And the Kraken just haven't exactly, been up there like say like the Vegas Golden Knights were after that. I mean, they started things out right in Vegas. Seattle, not so much, okay? And they're struggling, and they're on their third coach right now with Bilsma. And, it just really hasn't been everything that they want to be. I mean, they're fluttering around 500. And he was in a bad spot there. I think personally. Okay. So he's going to be the backup for now. So, I mean, and then beyond that, there's Appleby and the other guy from Charlotte.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No, but nobody's lighting the world on fire.
Yeah.
Right. Drieger's the guy for now. And the thing that I think about that is they know Drieger, right? Because he was claimed in the expansion draft. If they thought that he wasn't somebody they wanted in their organization, they wouldn't have signed him back. So let's be honest, it's Bob's team. I think they've got some time to figure this out. Maybe they draft a goalie this year. They've also got a goalie in Lethbridge or Medicine Hat in the Western Hockey League, who's was goalie of the month twice this year in the Western League. Now, he's not going to be starting next year in place of Bob. There's some time here, Bill. Basically. Right. But I think the other thing with Spencer Knight is that you got to give something up to get something. Let's not forget.
Right.
And I think Seth Jones forced Chicago's hand last week when he badmouthed the organization and said, we've been the worst team in the league as long as I've been here. That was bad. Right. But he's all that. He's a $9.5 million player. He's under contract till 2029. So I'm just saying he's all that. He's a top 5 NHL pick. So Chicago obviously sees something in Spencer Knight. I just wanted to put that in there. This is not necessarily the Panthers turning their back on Spencer Knight. You got to give something up to get something. And again, there's some time to see who's the next one for Bob. Bob is not slowing down. He just recorded another shutout last night. I can't even remember the number. It's 35th. Does that sound right? It's just he's racked up so many.
And he passed up Van Beesbrook on the Panthers list. He's like number 3 on there for shutouts now. The train just keeps rolling with him. I mean, and it's not going to slow down anytime at all. Now, there has been, and I have an informal poll out on Twitter right now, and it's real close. I said, were you in favor of the trade? It's like 55% to 45%. I mean, it's like neck and neck. And I got to say this before we kind of delve into it a little bit. This is so reminiscent of Huberdeau and Tkachuk. Okay. It's like, it's really, it's bringing back all these memories, Rod. It's like, I mean, and you remember out on Twitter and all the people were saying, I don't know if Tkachuk can hold his stick, that kind of stuff. What do you think about that?
Guy, man, I was in Calgary the day of that trade.
Oh.
And I thought that Brad Treliving, the GM of the Flames at that time, fleeced Bill Zito. Fleeced him. Jonathan Huberdeau was on the way to being the Panthers' career leader in every stat. Well, assists, games played, points. He was the most recognizable Panther up until that day. And Matthew Tkachuk was coming off an all-star season with Calgary, but he was a guy that didn't want to be in Calgary. Point being, I thought the Flames won that trade that day.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Flips, it didn't take very long to see who won that trade, and it was not the Calgary Flames. So, yeah, you make a really good point. We all sit out and make these generalizations, but by the way, that's what we do. It's what the fans do. It's what the media does, and now podcasters. So we're allowed to do that, Bill.
Yeah.
We might be a little ahead of ourselves. Wouldn't be the first to do it, right?
Well, also too, very few times has Bill Zito been wrong, okay? Or
No.
is he really kind of screwed up a trade? Okay, it's been minimal, which is incredible in this business because it really you have to understand the dynamics of things. Now, also too, and I think a lot of people need to take a step back. Zito was with the Blue Jackets. He was assistant general manager when Seth Jones was there. Okay. So he knows him. He knows the product. He knows what he's going to get. And one of the things that I've said over the past 24 hours is if the Seth Jones from the Blue Jackets comes back to the Panthers, okay, this is a huge win for the Panthers.
Yeah, I know. Well, you talk about Serena, my wife, and what she said about Seth Jones. She just couldn't believe that he would trash his own team, the Chicago Blackhawks, the way that he did. But to be honest, I don't care. And Bill Zito obviously doesn't care. He didn't say anything that wasn't true. So I'm big on that. I said to Serena, I was taught you should never be afraid to speak the truth. But she doesn't agree. Canadian hockey players are raised to bite their tongue. U.S. hockey players are not. But again, Zito knows him. You make a very good point there. And let's be honest, he's a tremendous player. Did they need him? You'd have to ask Bill Zito about that. And as last I saw, he hasn't spoken about this yet. But better's better. He's very expensive, though.
Yeah, I think tomorrow morning during practice they're going to have Zito is going to have a press conference with Seth Jones there, and they're going to talk about is he going to play tomorrow night against the Bolts? There were rumors that he was going to be able to start that game, but in line with all this with Bill Zito, okay, he's a numbers guy, and I just don't mean like financial numbers. He looks at stats, he looks at data. He just, he's a computer. He computes all this. He runs this through. So, this kind of move didn't happen in a vacuum. All right. I'm sure, he bounced this off of, just for grins and giggles ownership. And I'm sure he bounced it off of Luongo too. He said, can we do this with Drieger as a backup for Bob? I mean,
yeah.
Is that something we can take? That's the kind of guy I think Bill Zito is. And now today the news came out, and I don't know if you saw this, that Tkachuk was placed on long-term injured reserve, okay, which frees up that cap space. And with one of the draft picks, it's a conditional draft pick, and it could change. And when I saw that, that kind of like set off some bells that Zito may not be done here, okay? We still have, today's what, the 3rd, Friday's the 7th. So, we're there's still some play in here. I think Zito's positioning himself to do something else. I think I saw there was like $8.75 million freed up when Tkachuk went to long-term injured reserve. So I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot of money right there.
And in the playoffs, the salary cap doesn't count.
Yep.
Ask the Tampa Bay Lightning, ask the Vegas Golden Knights. Those two teams have won a couple Stanley Cups between them, as you know. So it's not the same team without Matthew Tkachuk. I know you watch every game because I see your Twitter. Right. But they're going to I guess they're getting used to playing without Matthew Tkachuk. I did see him after the game last night. He's not showing any ill effects of his injury, but they would not have put him on long-term injured reserve if they didn't absolutely have to, just like Team USA wouldn't have left him on the bench for the final of the Four Nations if they didn't absolutely have to. Right. I don't know what you've heard. I've heard that it's a groin injury.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I know that those can take a real long time to come back from. And clearly the Panthers don't want to mess around with it because they want to win another Stanley Cup.
I agree. I think I think it is a groin from what I've seen before and from what I've talked to other players before. And I've talked to some players before. And the only thing that is going to heal that is time. There is no magic bullet. There's no surgery. There's no pill. There's no medication, nothing. It's just one of those things that's going to take time. Now, and I've also said this too, and I've posted this out on Twitter, is, are they okay for the rest of the regular season without him? Absolutely. Okay. They can handle it. They can handle the workload. They've shown they can handle the workload. Okay. Some of these guys have just been absolutely amazing, like Lusterinen lately, Lundell. They've just been jumping off the charts with some stuff, okay, which has really pleased me. But as far as the playoffs are concerned, they need him for the playoffs. There's no questions asked, okay? They will not make it past the first round without Matthew Tkachuk. I'll go out there and make that statement, and you can take that to the bank.
It was last Monday that Paul Maurice was on the radio here, WQAM, on the Joe Rose Show, the most popular radio show in South Florida, saying that Matthew Tkachuk will play again this year. It's not that kind of deal, I think was the quote. I think we all trust Paul Maurice just like we trust Bill Zito. So I'll tell you what, it's interesting, man. I've only been here 4 years covering the Panthers. It has not been a dull ride. Everybody tells me before that it was. The team was bad. They were never in the playoffs. These days, oh my God, there's always lots to talk about, eh?
Absolutely. Absolutely, with all of this. And, one of the things that I also wanted to talk about, coming up with all this is, people have been talking about the playoff format and, coming into it. And, it's like, okay, we're probably going to play the Bolts again. We're probably going to play the Hurricanes again. It's like, here we go, wash, rinse, repeat kind of thing. And, I've always been in favor of the way the playoffs used to be. I mean, that was the way I think they should go back to that in a heartbeat. What do you think about that?
Well, it's been a lot of years since they did that. Are you talking about the top 8 or the top 4 within the division? Because I'm like you. I've been around a long time. We've seen a lot of different. Formats. They went to this in division format to create rivalries, which is kind of dumb because then they scaled back the season series between rivalry teams, i.e. the Panthers and Lightning only play each other 3 times a year. Yet they meet in the playoffs every year. Doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? And then they brought in the wild card, which, to be honest, I've worked in sports a long time. You have to have that wild card in there to legitimately make it fair. When you've got a team that has a worse record than a team in the next division and you get in, but they don't, that's not right. So I don't really have a problem with the way that it is now. I love it all, I guess. Serena is like you, so she's always finding fault with something. And it would be pretty boring if we agreed on everything, me and her. But the top 8, that's the one that I hear the most from the hockey people, especially the broadcasters. Like Bill Lindsay is a great example of a guy who said, we got to go to the top 8 because when you're the first place team, you deserve to play the 8th. You had the best year. You shouldn't be playing the 4th. It dampens your chances of winning. The series aren't as short, but again, I don't have a problem with what they're doing. So I don't know. I'm not arguing your point. Why don't you tell me why you want to go back to what it was?
Well, for the same reason, that people say is, that first place team, it's earned it. Okay. It's earned that right to play like the 8th place team. Okay. And then conversely, 2nd, 7, that kind of thing. I think they've earned it. And because of, they've been diligent and dedicated throughout the regular season. And one of the things that also too, that I noted too, and I think this Maurice has said this somewhere in the past couple of weeks is, about how the Panthers play during the regular season. Or somebody said this. I'm not sure if it was Maurice, but somebody said this about the Panthers, but how they're built for the playoffs. Okay. They are not built for the regular season. And I really kind of like that quote. And I know Maurice has said on numerous occasions, he said, people have to remember that the regular season is a marathon. It's not a sprint. Okay. And, there are a lot of games, for instance, okay, he'll find, they've lost and he's been pleased with the way they played. There's been other games that they've won. And it's like, well, you know what? Well, for example, the game against Edmonton the other night, he comes out of there and he says, you know what? For the last 8 minutes of the game, I thought we played well. Other than that, no, we didn't play well at all that game. And I'm like, okay, wow. All right. I mean, that was pretty, he's pretty direct about that. And that's one thing I like about Paul, but he's right. Okay. This regular season is a marathon. Okay. You have to pace yourself. All right. And then you got to know when to flip that switch to turn the afterburners on when it becomes late March, early April, and you need to start firing things up. So I think a lot of teams can get burned out. For example, I'll say the Oilers, all right, because up until this losing streak, they've been a house of fire. I mean, it's just like every night, Draisaitl and McDavid are on the score sheet, and they're plowing through. And then the last 5 games, I mean, it's just been nothing. So you don't want to burn yourself out too early on things like that.
Well, I think that you could, I'm fortunate to be around Paul Maurice a lot of times after games in the post-game scrum, and he just exudes a calmness about him. And I think he loves being here because not everybody in the media and the fan base are on his ass for every little thing that he did. So I left Winnipeg in the middle of his 9th season, right? Almost impossible to coach there. My point on this, Bill, is a year ago, a little less than a year ago, I want to say with about 20 games left in the regular season. Do you remember he started sitting guys and the Panthers were losing and people were losing their minds? You and I didn't know each other yet, but you were probably losing your mind. Mm-hmm. And he had to, I can't forget the quote where he stood there and said, "Everyone relax." Sort of like, I got this, right? So up in Winnipeg, where they're flirting with Washington, battling for number 1 all year, probably going to burn themselves out trying to get a President's Trophy. Paul's like, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. We need to basically get healthy, not empty our tanks. And we saw him do it last year. And the nice thing here is nobody's on his ass anymore. They were last year, but he proved himself. And they're not on Zito's ass either because they've been in the Stanley Cup final the last 2 years. It's nice that the fan base has faith in those guys.
Oh, absolutely. And, you look at conversely, going to the President's Trophy. I think it's a death sentence.
It is
when you get the President's Trophy. It's just, look, I remember one year when the Capitals got it and then boom, they flat, I think maybe first round gone. And look at the Panthers when they won it. Okay. It was like what? Second round gone. I mean, it does not mean a thing, but I think I've heard Maurice also say, you don't want to be just flatline, but you want to play consistently enough that you put yourself in a good position. All right. And what he meant by that, I thought what he meant by that was, not necessarily get the President's Trophy, but win enough games. So for most part, you'll have home ice because home ice means a lot to these teams.
Well, the last team to win the President's Trophy and win the Stanley Cup was the Chicago Blackhawks 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So that's over a decade ago. So, people can sit and argue whether it's a curse or not. It is. And to be honest, those fans up in Winnipeg, because so many view my daily show that I do on television, you can't convince them otherwise. They won first place in the regular season. It's like, you can have it. That's not the prize you want.
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to kind of circle back here before we kind of close things up. But Seth Jones, all right, do you think he's going to be like he was with the Blue Jackets and make a difference for the Panthers?
I think so. I talked to a Blackhawks fan today who's very close with the Connor Bedard family, and he goes, it didn't work for Seth Jones in Chicago because he was asked to be a leader there, and he's just not that type of player. I don't know him. I don't know him as a person. He's a tremendous player. Here they got enough leaders. So if they want him to come and play 22 minutes a night, run the power play, because Aaron Ekblad's been doing that, and to be honest, I think he's been doing a decent job of it. But if he's here for all offense, just go out and play and don't ask him to lead. I think it's going to be a great, great move for the Panthers.
I do too. And I think, like you said, he can eat up these minutes. And, this was the number one need that I saw, and I went to some of the other hockey podcasts, like the Cats and Rats podcast. Kirby, I know him pretty well. And, he and I have exchanged several messages, and one of the things he said was that right-handed defenseman is something I think that he said, I think is so critical for the Panthers to get, and they have that now. All right. So, you're Bill Zito. What are you looking for now for the rest of this week?
Well, probably nothing. I mean, they're first place in the division.
Mm-hmm.
So I think 2 years ago at this time, the Panthers were the only team in the NHL that didn't make one single move. They were the only team that didn't make one. And then last year, they were very active. Off the top of my head, Obviously, Tarasenko, Kyle Okposo. Trying to remember what moves they made. They made quite a few. I almost thought too many. Shows how little I know. They go on to win the Stanley Cup. So here, it might be somewhere in the middle. This one deal is a big one. It's a big deal, and
it is.
And don't think that this won't have some sort of impact in the dressing room. I don't think it'll be a bad one, but I know for a fact, having been in there, that Spencer Knight and Sergei Bobrovsky were pretty close. So, and maybe Dreger and Bob are too. I don't know, but they need to get over that. Spencer Knight, they thought was going to be the next one. He's now gone, and look forward, and I think they will. And how about Monday night? Oh my God, that's the game.
Yeah, that's going to be a playoff preview. No questions asked. No questions asked. It's going to be every bit the game that you want to watch. You know what it's going to be? It's going to be the game that the Oilers game should have been. All right, because the Oilers game you had thought that it was going to be nip and tuck and just Maurice said no. It was just no. It wasn't the kind of game that I was really happy with. The last 8 minutes were, but I think you're going to see from the drop of the puck till the final whistle that game Monday night is going to be one of the better games this year. It's going to be pretty intense.
I certainly hope so. So can we talk about you picking at other fan bases?
Absolutely. Go for it.
Salt is your favorite term, I noticed. What'd you say?
Salty, yes.
Salty. So you take particular pleasure in that, huh?
Yes, I do. And, well, let me back up here. All right. There are some teams for me, growing up and then now, there are just some teams to me that absolutely, positively rub me the wrong way all the time. Okay. I mean, I got to say this, though. Eichel, I was very impressed with him during the Four Nations. Okay. I was very impressed with his leadership capabilities as well, too. In fact, and I'll go on record and say this, I think he's more of a leader than Connor McDavid is. Okay. I'll go out and say that. McDavid is probably the best in the world, but you know what? He really needs to hone up his leadership skills. I wish Edmonton would work with him because they could hone him into another Sidney Crosby. All right. And it won't take a lot to do something like that. So, that's kind of my take on that. And there's some other teams out there that rub me the wrong way as well, too.
I feel like you've got 31 other teams to get under your burr. So I just sit back and enjoy it. I enjoy it, man. In my past life as a play-by-play guy with hockey and football, I used to get into it with fans of other teams and our own fans, and it was fun. It was fun. I know why you do it. It's fun. Now I don't have the energy. I don't have the energy. And there's too many kooks out there.
Yeah.
You never know which one's going to be the one that's going to come knife the tires in your car or something.
Well, one of the things that I do, and I've done that with a lot of these, is I come right back and I'll block them. All right. So there's no question on X. I just go out there, they're blocked, their past history, not gonna even worry about them anymore. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy my podcast. I enjoy listening to all, my favorite pastime during the week, listening to your podcast, listening to Cats and Rats, Panther Trade. I go out there, I listen to everything. I absolutely listen to everything, and I enjoy it, and I soak up every second of it. I think it's fantastic.
That's awesome, man. We need more fans like you and podcasters like you. So that's good, man. Well, I appreciate the chat.
Well, I got to thank you. And you guys just give my best here. Your better half. Keep up the great work. You guys, like I said, and I'm going to say something I said to Rod before we started here. My three favorite podcasts is when they had Jeff Rimmer on this year, Doug McClain, and Billy Lindsay. Okay. If you haven't watched those podcasts, do yourself a favor, go back there and watch them. Okay. It's just a wealth of information. And it's one of these ones, I have them bookmarked because I'll watch them again. I got a confession to make. I've watched them more than once. Okay. Because they're that good. They are that good. And you guys just keep on doing what you're doing. All right.
Same to you, Bill.
As always, guys, it's a great day for hockey. Take care.
Thank you.